If you're looking for proven ways to take your fundraising results to the next level, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Intentional Fundraiser Podcast, hosted by Tammy Zonker. Tammy has trained and led thousands of nonprofit organizations to collectively raise more than $500 million, and is also recognized as one of America's top 20 fundraising experts. This is the podcast where Tammy equips and empowers amazing fundraising pros like you to transform your fundraising so you can transform the world. And now, let's hear from Tammy.
Today on the Intentional Fundraiser Podcast, my guest is Justin Yaassoub. We both led one-day masterclasses at the Western Canada Fundraising Conference in Edmonton recently. He and our mutual friend, Tony Myers, who we both respect and adore beyond measure, they facilitated a great session about leading change with passion and with empathy. And I was so sad that my masterclass ran concurrently. Otherwise, I would have been the front row student in your masterclass, Justin. Justin is director of All Around Consulting, where they empower frontline people to lead and to achieve superior results. The work that they do with leaders who understand that their people are the key to their success. And they've used their proven high performance process to empower increased productivity, engagement, and retention in as little as 4 weeks. He also develops and facilitates leadership courses at MacEwan University in Edmonton and the Northern Alberta Institute of Technology. Justin was recently recognized by MacEwan University as a distinguished alumni and by Edify magazine as one of Edmonton's 2022 top 40 under 40. Justin served in Canada's Special Operations Forces Command from 2012 to 2018, a direct combat counter-terrorism group to support Canadian foreign policy and security objectives. Everything from hostage rescue to humanitarian assistance and more. As a Canadian Special Forces operator, Justin was awarded with the Bravery Medal for his teamwork and leadership. Justin believes that through hardship and adversity, the strongest of bonds are realized and the greatest of leaders shine. He's driven by the realization that his present is the compounding effort of every experience, choice, and consequence of his past. And for this reason, he's committed to living a life in competition, not with others, but with himself, expecting himself to live consciously every day with a standard of being better than yesterday. And I'll just add, the more that I've learned about Justin, the more inspired I am. The words that I would use to describe him are intentional, disciplined, authentic, integrity, just to name a few. So, Justin, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Tammy. That's quite the intro. And yeah, humility, I appreciate it. It's a lot there. Thank you very much. It's
all true.
Here. And of course, it is an honor to be here because I love what you do and the time you spend to impact others and share, what you're good at. And of course, given the fact that it's for nonprofits, it's outstanding. So I'm happy to be here to support you in any way and have this great discussion.
Awesome. Well, I know our listeners are going to get a lot of value. So truly, we're the grateful ones. So, one of my favorite quotes comes from John F. Kennedy, and he said, "High tide lifts all boats." And it comes to mind when I think of you because I feel like that's what it would be like to be around you on a regular basis. Like it just elevates everyone's integrity and intentionality and level of excellence. So my question is really, have you always been this way? And if not, was there a defining moment where you made that commitment to yourself that you would kind of renounce mediocrity and inspire to be the best version of yourself every single day?
Yeah, self-awareness kind of comes with time and with age. And I would say I'm substantially more self-aware today than I have ever been. And I know in a month from now, I will say the same thing. Because that's like you said, competition with self. And that includes the competition of knowing who you are and what your triggers are, what drives you, what doesn't, and how you could push through the struggles of modern society. I think we don't give ourselves enough credit to know that we just have to wake up and take on a challenge every day. That survival challenge to to the question per se, when did I know that? I think I'm just a byproduct of outstanding mentors and people that have been in my life throughout, whether that's me at the age of 12 to 19 in Army cadets, all the way to the Special Forces community, to all these different aspects and places I've been. So I would say that I wasn't always like that. I model the positive behavior that's been around me.
Mm. You know, when I teach storytelling, I really encourage people to look for a moment. I mean, you've had so many mentors and you've been so open to people pouring into you, it sounds like. Was there a special moment or specific moment? You mentioned the cadets. I wonder, those are pretty formative years,
Mhm.
12 to 19.
Yeah. And that's the part, like cadets really, I feel like I have an advantage in life because I started my leadership journey at the age of 12 and put in those leadership roles and taught that through, of course, the military definition of what leadership is. And whether it's going to summer camps and leading and all that kind of stuff. So I guess one that stands out, we were out in a camp doing a adventure activity, I guess. And we were canoeing down a river, and we'd have to sleep. It was a 300-kilometer canoe ride, but so we'd have to sleep during that process to finish the full canoe trip. And it was a downpour, and
Oh,
I pretty much slept in a puddle of water. I was just soaked and miserable. And my shelter, which was just a ground sheet, just a sheet that you kind of put up, had a lot of holes in it, and I was miserable. And I remember I woke up and the guy slept on one side and the girl slept in another area. And one of the girls came up running and said, "Hey guys, how's it going today?" I'm like, I look at her like, "Someone slept well." She's like, "Oh no, I didn't. Pretty much slept in an ocean. It was terrible." And those little, I guess that's where I want to go back to, like how she spun that, and it's all those little things. And that's why I'm a strong believer that everybody's a mentor in your life and everybody provides that impact. And that's why for me, it's like being in this consulting coaching side. And I guess people like to call it motivation. I really don't fully embrace that because I feel like you could get that from anyone and everyone, whether that's your partner, your children, your neighbor. So I guess that's one moment that I would reflect back on when I was younger, that kind of started shaping my perspective to say I could control the worst case scenario. I control my emotions and it was just rain and it was just wet. Everything else, I decided how I felt about it. Just like
yeah.
she decided that she was going to make it positive. And yeah, so it happened early for me. So it made my life easier as I experienced harder challenges and hardships.
How cool that you were present enough at 12 or however old you were on that
Yeah.
particular adventure
14.
to 14 to see the lesson in that. Love
Mhm.
it. Love it. Well, talk to us about this amazing masterclass that you co-facilitated at Western Canada Fundraising Conference with Tony Myers, and specifically how the roles of passion, empathy, courage, and self-sacrifice in leadership and achieving excellence, like that cocktail, and how, those attributes, the passion, the empathy, how they build and create great leaders.
Yeah. I want to give again a shout out to Tony. I know the community knows him very well. And I am just so blessed that he said hi to me and he said, "Hey, I want to work with you or together." And yeah, he's just a wealth of knowledge. And that's the thing about being around people like that, is the fact that I get to learn every time I'm beside Tony for free. And I have so much gratitude to the fact that he spends time with me and that we got to do this conference together. And yeah, he's more than double my age. But he still believes in my experience, and he believes in how I see the world, and he values that and validates it for me. So he's been an outstanding human to me. And I'm just so blessed that he's even recognized that I never once thought I was part of the nonprofit community, right? Like, I don't do nonprofits. And he's like, "You've got 3 of them." I'm like, "Oh, like, that's just doing. So yeah, Tony's just been amazing. So the conference there was great to be a part of. And we did talk about change. And my go-to is always connecting it back to the individual. And the reason for that is I can't control the organization and what it decides. And I can't control people outside of myself, but I could control myself and I could understand the world through me. So we started that conference by doing just that, asking people to reflect back on a time where they experienced or decided to bring change into their life, into their personal life. And through that experience, we talked a little bit about the hardships and the complexity and the tension with self. Should I keep doing this plan? Am I actually losing weight? Should I move this? Should I change this career? All that, like that tension. Now imagine when a leader or an organization wants to create that change. So we
It's
started with self.
complex.
It's very complex. And sometimes we're not empathetic to that. But that's what we started with, is to kind of connect people to that. And in addition to kind of what you talked about a little bit about empathy, courage, self-sacrifice, it's through my experience, I came to realize that everything is about the human connection. And I know I as a special forces operator, some would say, oh, as special forces operators, you kind of like herd and you don't really focus on that human connection. And it can't be farther from the truth. We're also strictly driven by empathy and connection. And to me, connection is empathy, courage, and self-sacrifice. The empathy is what drives the courage, the action. And courage isn't jumping in front of a hail of bullets. It's just action. It's saying that, hey, you're not doing too well, or you're struggling. I will get you that cup of coffee, or I will help you with that project. And through that, you sacrifice a bit of yourself, right? You sacrifice your time, your money, your effort. And I think that needs to be rewarded. It's a good thing to sacrifice. And it's selfish. Like being in the nonprofit world, like you get a lot of thank yous and all that. But the biggest thanks is also for me, because I like to give. And yeah, so we try to embrace that and say it's okay. And let's reward it. And connection is key. And, Tony's all about relationships, right? And I was telling him I'm all about connection. And he's like, well, Justin, chill out a little bit. Relationship is just sustained connection. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's amazing. So
Yeah.
let's connect with people. And sometimes that's enough. And with some, we're going to create relationships. You and I connected, it's there. Maybe this is going to move into relationship. And that's where, trust, openness, risk comes into play. And yeah, that's kind of our leadership philosophy. We just focus on the basics.
I
Yeah.
love that. And I think there's such an important lesson for us in the nonprofit world, and specifically for us, we fundraisers. We are all about connection and building relationships with our donors. But internally, we're so focused on results, where there's so much pressure to raise this much money or increase the donor retention rate. And it can become void of empathy. It can be all about the numbers and performance. And it's such an inauthentic experience for those who are genuinely building relationships externally and creating those connections. And yet to turn around internally and treat your people like a machine. Yeah.
That I don't work with the restaurant industry anymore, but we did early on in our company. And this is the part you expect your staff to be kind and generous and serve your people and understanding. And the customer's always right and all that. Yet you don't treat your staff that way. So it doesn't work. You have to use the same model. And if you treat your staff that way, they'll treat others that way. I love that you brought that up. I think your external, and that's authenticity, consistency in how you behave and how you treat people.
Yeah. And we've seen the results of not being authentic, not showing that empathy and genuine care and building those connections with our fundraisers, our staff, because there's a staffing shortage now. A lot of fundraisers have either moved on to other jobs thinking the grass is greener, and perhaps it is, or they've left the industry altogether. And that's a real loss. So we know what to do. It's what you said. It's the courage to show up every day and to say, in the face of this demand and pressure for numbers, I am still going to treat people like humans.
Yes.
Yeah. And help remove barriers and help them be successful. Because when I can help them be successful, everyone wins.
Yeah. And you exactly same terminology. Like as a leader, I think our number one goal is to set the conditions necessary for success. So what does that mean? Removing barriers. That's exactly it. Capacity building, training, development, connecting with our people and our staff and on a kind, genuine level, So I love that. Again, it's what you said there, just set the conditions necessary for success. And as a leader, that is your primary goal, I think is no, there's a lot of leadership is not easy, but one of them is to make sure that your people are successful and you play a part in setting the conditions for that success.
Yeah. Amen.
Yeah.
So tell us about the principles of your high performance process and how that process can be applied to nonprofit organizations and fundraising teams to really drive that culture of productivity, engagement, and retention.
Mhm. The thing about high performance, it's like, why do I love high performance? Well, high performance, it takes aim at the unpredictable nature of life. That's it, and I don't know anyone that has a 100% predictable life. So why not prepare for that? And this is kind of what we bring to organizations. And if I was to say specifically on the nonprofit side, we come in to the individual to level up the individual that therefore will level up the team, that therefore will level up the organization. And for us, we don't come up from the strategic side. We come up from the frontline side and provide power and purpose behind alignment and connection to the purpose of the organization. It's a good thing, right? Sometimes, we feel like we've got the us versus them mentality and we hate the organization or the cause or whatever it might be. But, we're part of that. And the faster we could align ourselves to it, the more empowered we feel and the more success that we're going to gain. So our high performance model is a little bit more complex and it's a step by step approach. But the first thing is it starts with self-awareness. And then from self-awareness, we move into self-acceptance, accepting the things that you're great at, good at, and need improvement at. And the next piece is that discipline component of what you want to improve and what you want to sustain. But overall, it's just understanding who you are and what you bring to the table and what you need to be able to be at your best self.
hmm Yeah. And it sounds like it goes back to that philosophy start with the individual, then the team, and ultimately it shifts the organization.
Yes.
It sounds so simple. And yet I know in application, like it does take intention and discipline and courage to show up like that every single day.
Yes.
Even when you've been the equivalent of sleeping in a puddle under a
Yeah.
holding tarp.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess we could call it conscious leadership. Like just be conscious in what you're doing. We unconsciously do so many things and react unconsciously to a lot. And all we kind of do is we try to get you to start being a little bit more conscious. And it's easy. It's like, how do you tie your shoe? Arguably, some people don't even know how anymore because you've been doing it for so many years. Okay, let's go back and look at how we actually tie your shoe. And here's a challenge: just tie it differently. By doing one thing different, I'm not a neuroscientist by any means, but it like rewires your brain and how you come to see things and what you do and your habits and all that. And it allows you to just be more conscious in life.
Yeah. I went through a professional development course. It was like an 8-week course a few years ago. And they challenged us or in many, many ways, believe me. But one of the things they said was something simple like that. They said, when you brush your teeth, brush it with the opposite hand that you typically brush your teeth with, all 8 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And it was it was just so illuminating in
Yeah.
terms of how we are so unconscious or kind of asleep at the wheel in our lives sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a really, really good example as well. Just basic, right?
Yeah. Amazing. So tell us about some common internal barriers that nonprofit organizations, and I know you work with for-profit organizations as
Mhm.
well. So some internal barriers that organizations and specifically fundraisers I'm thinking of, some things that they might face, barriers they might face when it comes to achieving growth and profitability, and how do they overcome these challenges?
Yeah, there's obviously so many different things that we could talk about, but the one that I'm like you said, intuitive, natural, whatever comes, kind of we go with. But uh, I'm going to talk about accountability this time a little bit. We fear it, right? We're scared to hold people accountable, and it's interesting because like part of this mass resignation and people leaving, it's actually part of it. Leaders right now feel like, oh, please don't talk about discipline. They don't want any of that. They want any more rules or micromanagement. Like, they're actually craving that. They're craving consistency, accountability, and discipline because high performers want that. If you're showing up to work to be your best, you want to be held accountable to the things that you're doing. And accountability comes though from the thing that we're missing from accountability is expectation. I can't hold someone accountable to something that they don't know or have not been told about. I think we're at a point where I think we have a little bit, we're expecting a lot from people and making assumptions that they would know something. But as leaders, we need to go back to make sure that we are speaking expectations. We're showing what standards are, and we're actually teaching and instructing people to meet those expectations and standards and holding them accountable to it.
Mm-hmm.
That's the knowing, there's not a lot of people that thrive in ambiguity and the unknowing, or they're like, yeah, I just like when I have no clue what's going on. Right. So as leaders, we need to bring that to organizations and to our teams to hold them accountable. And discipline isn't yelling and screaming. It's just structure. I always like to use the example in your home. If your kids or your roommates or whatever just kind of show up and they kick their shoes off to the side and put their jacket on the floor and eat the food, but don't put it back in the sink, and dishes don't get washed. People don't really use the washroom. The dogs don't go outside. They go inside. How do you feel? Morale is
Right.
exactly. And morale is probably low and all that kind of stuff. That's a discipline. We have a discipline in our own home to make sure that it stays clean and it functions well. We need to bring that to the organization as well. We can't fear discipline. And this whole relaxed approach is necessary. It's important to create psychological safety. But as humans, we're safest under routine, structure, and positive direction. I don't think we need to fear that. I know it's got a bad rep a little bit and it's associated with authoritative and Machiavellian style leadership. It doesn't have to be authoritarian. It could be consensus. It could be shared consensus.
Mm-hmm.
So those are kind of the things that I would bring in. And I know it's even harder in a nonprofit because, potentially you're not paying the right amount and people are there more potentially volunteering, maybe not, all those factors come in. So you feel like you shouldn't be as hard on your people. But I'm a strong believer that people are expecting to be held accountable and given proper guidelines and expectations to achieve success.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've seen in organizations where I've worked or coached and consulted that when we don't hold everyone accountable, those high performers really become kind of disillusioned that others aren't held to a similar standard. And that contributes to them leaving.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so sad.
Yeah.
The other thing I've heard you speak about are the 3 I's.
Mm.
Would you unpack the 3 I's for us?
Yes. Leadership is so tough. And that's the part. I don't ever say it's easy. It is so difficult and it's so challenging at every level, whether if you're just leading yourself, that starts there. And
Yeah.
it means you lead yourself. That means getting up in the morning. What do you do? How do you push? How does your mind drive that body? Right. So I start with that because there's leadership gurus and instructions everywhere now. There's a mass amount of information that we get, but not enough instruction. So if we talk about the 3 I's, obviously inspiration is huge. Many people talking, inspire human behavior, inspire your people, inspire that. Leaders are going out there and they're like, I'm inspiring, but nothing's happening. Well, that's because that's just the pop culture, I could say, communication of leadership. When we go a bit deeper, we realize leadership is a lot harder than that. You can't just go out and show up and be charismatic and people are going to move. There's more to it. So that's why I talk about the 3 I's. So the 3 I's for us is that before you could start inspiring, you need to instruct and influence. So for me, the first definition of leadership that I received at the age of 12 was the military definition, the Canadian Forces definition of leadership, which is leadership is to inspire, influencing human behavior to accomplish a task desired by a leader. So influence was there. So what's influence? I know we're going to simplify it here. Can you pass me that cup of coffee? And you did. I just influenced you to act, right? So that's awesome. Inspiration is the next level. But how do I get you to pass that cup of coffee? Well, I have to instruct you how to do it first, right? I know that's an easy task. I always like to go back to, we have to spend the time to instruct our people. And then after we're done instructing them, we could start now influencing them. And after we've influenced them, we could start just inspiring them. If I have time, I could give you an example that that kind of brings us all together, if you like.
Yeah, please.
So leadership first and foremost starts at home, and it's hardest at home. Your first leader is your mother. And that's another part. I always like to say our company is, we have this tough special forces front, but in reality, it's just my mom, just my wife. Like it's empathy, courage, and self-sacrifice. Like that's just a mom right there. I'll
Yeah.
say a parent just to be a little bit
More inclusive. Yes.
inclusive. Yes. So let's look at our children. You look at your child, you're like, oh, you've got your motor skills are on point now. Perfect. Chore time. Let's teach you how now you're going to start making your bed. You can't just say, go make your bed. That's influence, right? So you have to actually instruct them on how to make that bed. And the instruction phase starts with the standard is very low. If it's wrinkled, sheets are not tucked, the pillows are not in there, that's okay. We'll keep that instruction phase until we master that bed making. When we master that bed making, and that could be years, so influence and instructor could come hand in hand. Now they know how to make the bed. So the next day you're going to just say, hey, don't forget to make your bed. That's influence. Saturday, you're making breakfast downstairs. They rush downstairs and they're ready to eat. Oh, did you make your bed? Do I have to? Yes, you do. Influence them to go make the bed. And there goes that piece. The inspire part is very difficult because you have to inspire that behavior. Now, how do you do that? Well, you got to lead by example. Your bed better be made. Your shoes better. It's not just in the bedroom though. It's everywhere else. You better lead by example by putting dishes away, doing your chores, making sure your room is clean, and it goes everywhere. So you can be that inspirational parent. And that day will come where your kid jolts out of the door and you're like, oh, I didn't tell him to make the bed. You open that door and it's me. You've won. You've inspired human behavior. And of course, they're going to turn 13 and they're going to not want to make their bed anymore. And then we go back to that influence or potentially inspire in a different way, right? We as leaders have to evolve and adapt to the people that we're leading. And kids are growing. They have different influences in their life. And we have to match that to be able to inspire them to do the positive behaviors. So yeah, that's the 3 I's. And I think I just like to share that just for leaders that are struggling and inspiring people. I'm feeling like everyone's saying inspire, but I can't get anybody to be inspired. Well, there's more work to be done.
Yeah. There, it's an onion for sure.
Yeah.
Many layers.
Yeah.
And as you gave that example of making the bed, I was thinking about how it would apply to onboarding staff. Oftentimes, I feel like we spend so much time perfecting the position description and where do we post it and, vetting the applicants for the position and then the multiple rounds of interviews and group interviews. And we finally make the offer and they're on board. Hooray. And then they show up and it's like, oh, what are we going to do with them? How are we going to onboard them? How are we going to, and we don't have a plan. We're not as thoughtful and intentional. We're not instructing and then influencing and inspiring, right? We're not taking them through the 3 I's.
Yeah.
And even those organizations that do a fine job of that, bravo. But then we promote from within. And just like you said, okay, now they're 13. So they've been promoted from a specialist to a manager or a manager to a director. Do we have the same kind of process for instructing them? Like, what does it mean to be a manager? What does it mean to be a director? Like, what are those expectations? The clarity that you spoke about. I just think that's such a powerful tool.
I love your analogy and how you connected that back to promoting within because I'm stealing that. And I 100%. Like there's a lot of people that get promoted for technical ability, but not leadership ability. And they're not to blame, they're not to blame in that process because they're not taught leadership and it's just assumed that because you're able to do well, you could help others do well. And for some people, 100%, they're good leaders that way. But most of the time, you need to provide that development. And I know it's expensive sometimes. And I know but there's so many resources out there. You're a resource. You're a free resource for so many people. Your podcast airs, I think weekly, monthly, weekly. And that's a resource. I could take something from that if I'm conscious and intentional in listening to Tammy and her guests and taking notes, take notes. Notes are important. Pen and paper is important,
Yes.
So yeah, I really like that part because it actually explains why we fail sometimes as leaders and why we leave as leaders is because again, our organization or our leaders did not set the conditions necessary for us to be successful in that next position that we're getting.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. Ugh. All right. I recently had the privilege of interviewing Seth Godin about his newest book, The Song of Significance. And if you mentioned like the podcast, it's episode 51, if anyone wants to listen. I mean, he's just brilliant and generous and amazing. And in the book, The Song of Significance, he asks the question, what if this was the best job ever? Right? So and I think that applies to board members. What if this was the best volunteer leadership role ever? Or even our donors. What if this was the best giving experience ever? So, how do we create those conditions? How do we be intentional about crafting that journey in a way that takes into account what the person who's experiencing it, whether again it's be staff or a board member or a donor, what their values are and what they appreciate and what they value? So, from your perspective and view and experience working with teams, what makes a job the best job ever?
Yeah. Connection.
Connection.
Back to that. Like it's not the fact that you did the best project. It's who you did that project. And this doesn't apply. We're so cool as humans. We're so different. Some people are like, I just want to do it alone. I don't know a lot of people that are like that, but I definitely have had the best job ever and I still do. And I'm a, this is the part for me is like, again, we hear a lot about passion, follow your passion, purpose, follow your purpose. And it's tough because then it's not in our control. You're supposed to find your purpose, but how? And I think the reason why I'm going there is his best job ever is connected to purpose and a greater piece. And I'm interested to see what your interpretation is of it as well. But so for me, I don't look at purpose and passion. I look at commitment because I could control that. I think your passion or your purpose is revealed through what you commit to. I work a lot with athletes and they like mostly hockey players. I know we're in Canada. So, and through their commitment to hockey, they become passionate about it, becomes their purpose. And it's thousands of hours of commitment. So their purpose is revealed through that. So I just want to say that if you're lost or you're like, I don't know what my passion is or my purpose is, it's what you commit to. And you could take control of finding what your purpose is. It's not just like you have to like find it. It's out there. Your ability to commit is what allows you to kind of see that. And obviously you're not going to commit to something you hate, right? You're not going to commit to something that's giving you no dopamine rush, no reward. You're committing to something that's making you feel good. And arguably, with the nonprofit sector, a lot of people commit to those positions, to fundraising because they feel great. And then they could, I think passion it's a, not symptom. I would say it's a byproduct of commitment. So, I always like to use this, if you're, say you want to lead a project or you want to go this direction and you're passionate about it and your boss like, well, you just seem really passionate about this. I always coach people like say, hey boss, I'm with you. I'm actually committed to this.
Mm.
And that's why I'm speaking in this way. I'm not just passionate about it. I'm committed. Now we're conscious.
Yeah.
Passion is an emotion. Tomorrow it could go high or low and like happiness and everything else. So in the high performance world, we look at the controllables, controlling the controllables. I can't control my passion because it is an emotion. I can't control my happiness because it is an emotion. It is a byproduct, but I could control the things that do make me happy. Right. Yeah. So I hope that answered it.
It does. It does. And I agree. I think that, the best job ever is when you commit to something that gives you that rush, that feeling, and you find that alignment
Yes.
with others for this coming together to achieve. And what makes it the best job ever is that I can see we, the team, that we're making measurable progress.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, I get really frustrated.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's the commitment that is actually producing action.
Yes.
Yeah.
And, we're blessed to be in Western civilization, like to be in North America, to actually be able to say that we have the best job ever. But, it doesn't apply for everybody. And at one point in my life, I used to clean office spaces,
Mm-hmm.
right? Was that the best job ever? No, but I committed to it because I knew there was a greater role. But I love that idea. It's great if you are that person that has the best job ever or is striving to do that. But to me, it, it's the best life ever. It's, the best family ever. And the job is just supporting your ability to have the best life ever. So I just want to caution people with that. If if you're showing up to work and you're like, I still have the best job I ever had. Well, that's okay. You can still find purpose and happiness and joy in life outside of that job. So, and you could correct me if I'm wrong here. I just don't want to set the conditions that you must have a job that is the best job ever. We're blessed to be able to have that. As a son of immigrants, my parents didn't have the best job ever, right? But they definitely had a better life, and they definitely had the best life they could compared to what they had before.
Yeah. 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 I mean, I think that the key is finding, again, that committed purpose.
Yes.
And that could be making certain that my family is better off than my immediate past generation,
Yeah.
or et cetera. But I will tell you a story, and it really moves me to tell it. It was pre-pandemic. Everything's benchmarked by pre-pandemic, post-pandemic. Pre-pandemic. And it was like the day before Thanksgiving here in the US. And I'm at the grocery store trying to get all the ingredients. I've got all the family and extended family. I love to cook. I love to take care of people. So we typically host a big gathering, and the store is chaos. And in that environment, when people are feeling pressure and rushed and it's chaotic, they're not always their highest and best version of themselves, right?
Sure.
So I am in the checkout line, and groceries, keep getting scanned. And there's this little gentleman, he was a very small, elderly gentleman. I made up when I looked at him, and I made up that maybe this was a, like a second career for him. Like he had retired, and maybe I made this all up, Justin, in the
Yeah.
split second, that he was just filling time or looking for extra pocket money. And I just noticed that despite all of the energy and activity going on around him, he was so careful. Like he put the breads in one bag so they wouldn't get crushed. He put the vegetables, he stacked things and from heaviest to lightest in the cart. And I said, I just want to thank you and acknowledge you for the care that you're taking
Yes.
with the groceries. He stopped and he looked me square in the eye and he said, why wouldn't I? As I pack these groceries, as I pack this food for you, I'm picturing you serving your family Thanksgiving.
Mhm.
I'm picturing maybe your parents and your children and your grandchildren. I'm picturing this Norman Rockwell painting. And so it's my honor to take care, packaging the food that you will serve, the love that you will give to your family. And I almost burst into tears. I mean, I
Yeah.
could cry right now just thinking about it.
Mhm.
And so I would say it's what meaning you bring
Yes.
to the work that you're doing, whether it's the best job you ever had, or it's the job you have now.
Yes. And
Yeah.
the choice that you make.
The choice that
Like,
you make.
you probably heard of this quote before. Life is between B and D, birth and death. What's between B and D? C, choices. This man chose to go to work and make meaning out of that. He could also choose. There's a lot of people that go choose to not do that, right? And I'm huge with this. And yesterday I flew back into the city and I came to get my Uber ride, and the driver sent me a message saying, "Hey, can I get the address you're going to?" I said, I'm sorry, I'm uncomfortable in doing that, to type that out for you." And then he just canceled the ride. So it took me to another person, and he came and got me. I live far away from the airport. So I told the driver, I'm like, "Hey, like, this is the second time it's happened to me where they just cancel on me. Can I know why?" And he's like, "What's going on here?" He's like, "Oh, okay. Well, this is what's happening. They're gold members. So they're new, and they don't get to see the address of where they're taking you until they receive a certain amount of drives or status. I'm a platinum driver, so I know, and I already knew that this is a far drive. So of course I'm going to take it. And I'm like, okay, I had a little bit more empathy to why they would cancel that call. But at the same time, like you can't climb a tree from the top. And this is the piece for me. It's like, well, I would still try to do everything I can, even if it was a short ride, because I know if I do my part, I will get to the platinum and I will start seeing rides. Right. And I just like, and I talked to him, he was, immigrant from Nigeria. And he's like, yeah, when I was first doing, I just took everything because I knew when I get to this status, I could. And this is the part that we got to remember. I don't believe life has shortcuts. I know technology is helping us out a lot, and chat GPT and AI and all that kind of stuff, but to be able to be that high performer, you've got to do the hard stuff. The hardship, like you said in the intro, is what gets us to where we are. It's part of life. It starts at day one. And yeah, so that's kind of to that piece. Bring meaning into different levels, understand where you are in an organization. It's day one as a fundraiser. You're not going to bring in the $1 million. But what process are you going to follow that's going to be able to get you to be able to get $1 million, not in 10 years, but maybe in 3, right?
Yeah.
And if you commit to that, you'll get there.
Yeah. Love it. Choice.
Yeah.
Retaining top talent is crucial for both businesses and nonprofit organizations. And we've talked about that a bit. Recent surveys of fundraisers report that they feel unappreciated, overworked, and that fundraising as a profession is undervalued. What strategies or techniques do you recommend to nonprofit leaders for increasing fundraiser satisfaction, retention, and creating a more positive work culture?
Yeah, that's a tough one. And I'm happy you said other organizations. So to the leaders that are listening to this podcast, I just want to say it's not just hurting you. It's not just hitting you. And it's not just your organization. I think it's a nationwide, and everyone is kind of facing that. So that's one piece. So just, take a breath and understand that it's bigger than, it's not just you. And sometimes
you're not alone.
You're not, thank you. That's the word I was looking for. You're not alone. You're not alone. It's everywhere. But I want to take it back to connection, expectation, and that's the part, and the standards. Sometimes we feel like if we elevate standards, people are going to shy away or not want to be with us or whatever. But that's not true. That's the knowing. And arguably when they're performing at a lower level, you're treating them differently, but yet they don't know that you want them at a higher level. So I think openness and transparency needs to come back into the workplace in reference to accountability and what we want from our people. Conflict resolution, conflict is actually a positive conflict is one of the attributes and principles of high performing teams. That's how they make decisions. They need it to be able to maintain that level of performance. So in short, I would say, let's go back to expectations. Let's go back to not making assumptions that the people that we're bringing in know what to do, and have, they do know, respect what they know for sure, but also don't shy away from providing the expectations and providing that piece. And the other one about it is that, again, the reason why leadership is challenging is because people are challenging. People are dynamic. People are hard. People are fun, and people are exciting. So as leaders, we have to be like that too. We have to understand human behavior and understand the challenge that people go through and make it okay. But not just make it okay, but say, hey, like, I understand this is how you are, but this is where we're trying to go, and let's go. Right.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that answered it, but I think we just, as organizations and as leaders, we just need to level up on our expectations of people and not create an unknown piece.
Mm-hmm.
Feedback, performance evaluations. Like people are leaving organizations because they don't know how they're doing.
Yeah.
And, to bring in the special forces side of it and special forces selection, like after day one, we provide 0 feedback to candidates. And to some, this is why they quit, because they don't 6 days and they don't know how they're doing. So they'll just be like, I'm done. I can't take it anymore. Feedback is really, really important. I mean, it's by design. We do it for a different reason, but you shouldn't do that in your workplace. Provide ongoing feedback and continuous feedback to your people.
Mm-hmm. And I love that combined with what you said earlier around expectation.
Mm-hmm.
and not with a hammer necessarily, not, as you said, not by yelling at people, but by saying, I believe in you.
Yeah.
Like, we're going to teach you we're going to instruct, we're going to add to the gifts and talents that you bring so that we can get here for this purpose. And like, just pour it so people feel like you're valuing them, you're pouring into them and appreciating them. I think a little acknowledgement and some encouragement goes a long, long way.
It does.
Yeah. And I also
And
think
thoughtful ones, not just like, oh, good job. Like,
yeah,
actually tell me what you're talking about. Like, I really like how you wrote that, and I appreciate your sentence. We'll just use grammar, your sentence structure, and how you shape that letter or form that letter to really connect with the donor.
yeah,
Be specific in why they did a good job.
yeah. I love that. And I feel like that when authentically, consistently, when it's merited, doing that creates a space for when you need to bring an issue.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So good. Last official question, Justin. What's your best advice for fundraisers and nonprofit leaders as they prepare for what may predictably be a more challenging economy as we move into the fourth quarter, or at best, an continued uncertainty in the economy? What advice do you have for them?
Yeah. Preparation.
Yeah.
We always talk about the ape inside you, attitude, preparation, effort. Yeah, those are controlling the controllables. I can't control what's next. I can't control whether, government stops funding nonprofits because now we're at a all-time war or full-time war, whatever. And, all assets are going to the war machine. I can't control that. Right. But what I could control is that ape inside me and making that ape very, very strong, and attitude, preparation, effort. And then we could start talking about resilience, but it goes to that piece, and preparation is planning. And understanding that what you're doing today might not apply tomorrow. In addition to self-awareness, we talk a lot about situational awareness, understanding the environment you're operating in and where it could potentially be. But you are the best tool to combat whatever change happens. And this is why, going back to the beginning, we start with self, right? So control the controllables. And when things go, left or right, or the challenge, whatever that, another pandemic, whatever that might be, you're ready and you're resilient to take on that challenge. That's the only thing I could say. So this is the thing that we talk about. Skill. We train skill for the knowing. So you train a fundraiser on how to communicate, on how to draft the best donor letter and all that kind of stuff. Right. But we work on attributes to tackle the unknown. So what are these attributes? Perseverance, tenacity, courage. And this is what we're looking for when we're maybe in the onboarding process, in the hiring process. A better example would be like if we go to the trades world and you've got like, a mechanic, we'll say, keep it generic. And that mechanic is working, or a millwright is working on a pump. So they've been taught all the skills necessary to fix that pump. We know that, we all know it, that they're able to do it. So that's for your trained skills for the knowing. If it goes down, you know what to do. But this is where attributes come in. If it's minus 30 outside, I don't know if you get minus 30 down there. If it's minus 30 outside, right? No one has touched this pump for the last 6-7 years. All the bolts are tough on there. So you need to push through. And when you open it up, the oil squirts in your face. Now you're a one-eye mechanic. Now this is where attributes come in. Am I going to push through the conflict? Am I going to persevere through it? Right? I'm going to take a breather. I'm going to step away and say, okay, what's going on here, and come back and tackle the problem. So when we're dealing with the unknown, it's your attributes that matter, not so much your skill.
Mm-hmm.
So skills for the known, attributes for the unknown. Skill that attributes are developed.
Yeah. Powerful, really powerful. This has been amazing, Justin. Thank you.
Same here. It's good to chat with you.
Yeah, you too. All right. So, but you're not off the hook yet.
Okay.
At the end of each episode, I like to ask a few rapid fire, insightful questions to add just an even more value for our listeners. Are you ready?
I hope so.
Undoubtedly, you are. Number 1, what's the best fundraising or leadership advice you've ever received?
I'll go leadership advice. Not sure. I'll say, shut your mouth. that was the advice, but to just really listen, to stop talking, to truly listen consciously. And that's a skill, right? That can
Yeah.
be trained every single day and practiced every single day. And for me, I write it on top of my notebook, depending what meeting I'm going to, listen, sometimes a bit more aggressive with myself. So I will say, shut up or whatever. And I think that would be it, is just to consciously and empathetically listen to what people are saying. And when you listen, to also validate. And that's active listening. We think active listening is just listening and you don't say anything. That's not true. The things you're saying is to kind of elaborate on what you heard. So yeah, I would say that's probably been the best one, and the one that I continue to work on every single day.
Very good. What book do you recommend to our audience and why?
Mm, right now, I just finished reading the Intelligent Conversation, really good book. And it just talks about how conversations is actually intelligence and how we could elevate our intelligence just through conversation. And it talks a lot about how we could create psychologically safe spaces with our conversation, our tone, our direction, and all that. And again, that's, I could control that. Right. So I love going direct with things that I could control. So, and it goes a long way. And your appearance is part of communication, right? So understand language and all that, understanding how that is. So I would say that book has been tremendous for me.
What are the three most important traits a nonprofit leader must possess, or any leader?
I would have to go with the empathy, courage, and self-sacrifice, right?
Yeah.
Those were all there. And through that, authenticity is born. Through connection, authenticity is born, and trust and integrity. So yeah, there's so many, but I would say those right now.
What's your favorite conference and why?
That's, I mean, what would Dave say if I didn't say the Western Fundraising Conference, right? So I'd have to say that. And why is you were there, just the environment and how prepared people are to just come and learn and grow. And they're empowering self to empower others, right? Like, it's so cool. I love that part about nonprofit. I mean, you come in and you're trying to be the best version of yourself. So you go help your organization or your cause.
Yeah.
How great is that? What a great
Yeah.
connection to make into life, where the better I am, the better my world is. And this is why I do what I do. This is why I'm hard on myself. And this is why I only compete with myself, because I know the better I am, the better I will be for the world around me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the Western Canada Fundraising Conference has been named one of the 12 best conferences in the world. And I know that the 2024 dates have been announced. They're at the end of May this year, and it will be held in Winnipeg. And there is an early bird, or maybe it's even an extra early bird price discount going on right now. So if any of our listeners want to learn more about that specific conference, which I agree is amazing, we'll include a link to it in the show notes and you can check it out yourself. All right, last question. Justin, knowing what you know now about leadership, what advice would you give your younger self just getting started in your career?
I already used listen. So I would say courage, more confident, you know, even to this day, I still like to operate in the shadows and I don't throw myself up there too much. So, and I'll admit that's out of a fear. I had potentially fear of criticism. I'm not sure exactly what it is, working on it. We always got to work on ourselves. And so I would say that you're born to lead, like you're born to lead yourself. And leadership isn't authoritative. Like, it's not a certain style. I work with so many leaders that want to lead because the way the boss led, or they want to lead because of the way they read it in a book, and they come in and they make all these changes and it becomes unauthentic. Just be you. Don't be Oprah. Don't be Simon Sinek. Don't be Tony Robbins, or any other leader that you're looking at in the world. Don't be me. Don't be Tammy. Be you. And
Yeah.
when you're just you, you will create a movement around you, because because you're obviously connecting with people and you're being authentic. Just, you are beautiful. You are awesome. And
Yeah.
just share that with the world.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Again, Justin, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Pleasure.
Yeah. Yeah. If you want to learn more about Justin, his incredible work at All Around Consulting, or to follow him on social media, we've included links to his handles in the show notes. as well as links to all the other resources that we've talked about today. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Intentional Fundraiser Podcast, and keep on transforming your fundraising so you can transform the world. The Intentional Fundraiser Podcast is a Fundraising Transformed original. It's hosted by me, Tammy Zonker, founder and president of Fundraising Transformed, where we help equip and empower fundraisers, nonprofit leaders, and board members to transform their fundraising so they can transform the world. Visit fundraisingtransform.com/podcast to subscribe to this podcast and subscribe to my newsletter to get fundraising lessons, tools, and helpful resources delivered straight to your inbox each month. If you want my help with taking your fundraising to the next level, become a member of my Fundraising Transformers community as a growth member and join me live each month where I'll teach you the same strategies I use to lead, train, and coach thousands of nonprofits, social service organizations, healthcare foundations, private schools, colleges, and universities to collectively raise more than $500 million, including a single gift of $27.1 million. As a member, you can participate in my Ask Me Anything sessions every month and get answers to your burning questions. Chat with other growth members inside our private and safe online community about what you're working on, struggling with, and share lessons learned. And get instant access to my growing library of on-demand self-paced training classes. New content is added every single month. Learn more about becoming a member at fundraisingtransform.com/growth. Talk soon.